It was supposed to be an ordinary Friday evening. The air was still outside the Carter family's modest home in the quiet suburb of Dayton, Ohio. Inside, 3-year-old Lily Carter sat cross-legged in the living room, humming to herself as she carefully arranged her stuffed animals in a semicircle on the rug. Her favorite was a floppy toy golden retriever named Woof, its ears so worn they were nearly threadbare. Her teenage babysitter, Marissa, lounged nearby on the couch, scrolling through her phone, half watching cartoons with Lily. Lily's parents, Sarah and Thomas Carter, had stepped out for the evening, a rare dinner date, their first in months. Everything seemed calm, normal. Safe. Then came the sound. It was sharp, an unnatural glass shattering at the back of the house. Marissa sat up instantly, her phone slipping to the floor. Lily paused, eyes wide. What was that? She whispered. Before Marissa could respond, the back door flew open. 2 masked men stormed into the house, dressed in black, gloved, and armed. One of them barked orders, while the other grabbed Marissa, slamming her into the wall. Lily froze, too scared to scream. She clutched Woof to her chest as tears welled in her eyes. Marissa struggled, shouted something, then went silent as a fist knocked her out cold. She crumpled to the floor. That was when Lily ran. Her tiny feet pounded against the hardwood as she darted behind the couch. She squeezed herself into the narrow gap between the wall and the furniture, heart thudding in her ears, barely breathing. She could hear the men ransacking the house. Drawers opened, cabinets slammed, footsteps upstairs, the sound of glass crunching under boots. She didn't know how much time passed, minutes or hours. It all blurred together. Then came the sirens. Red and blue lights flickered through the living room curtains. Tires screeched outside. Shouted commands echoed in the night. Lily didn't move. From her hiding spot, she heard one of the intruders curse loudly, then footsteps rushing toward the back again. More glass shattered. She heard something fall, maybe one of her mother's vases. The front door burst open. Heavy boots stormed in. Voices loud, firm, but not angry like the other ones. This time they didn't sound scary. They sounded ... strong. But Lily still didn't come out. It wasn't until Ranger entered the room that everything changed. He was a German shepherd, lean and alert, with dark, intelligent eyes. His handler, Officer Martinez, followed closely behind. But it was Ranger who took the lead. The canine moved with purpose, nose close to the ground, tail low. He sniffed along the hallway, then into the living room. He stopped suddenly, ears perked. He turned to the couch. Lily's breathing hitched. She could see paws, big ones, just inches away. She pulled Woof tighter and squeezed her eyes shut. Ranger didn't bark. He didn't growl. Instead, he sat down and waited. Officer Martinez approached slowly. "You got something, boy?" Ranger gave a quiet whine and tilted his head. Martinez knelt beside him, peered behind the couch, and there she was. A trembling little girl with tear-streaked cheeks, wrapped around a stuffed animal. "Hey there, sweetheart," Martinez said gently. "You're safe now." Lily didn't respond, but her eyes opened and locked with Ranger's. She reached forward, tiny hand outstretched. Ranger leaned closer and nuzzled her palm. She let go of Woof and threw her arms around the dog's neck, burying her face in his fur. Ranger didn't move. He simply stayed there, as if he understood this wasn't just about finding her. It was about protecting her too. The paramedics came, so did the detectives. But Lily wouldn't let go of Ranger. Not when they carried Marissa out on a stretcher. Not when the EMT tried to check her vitals. And certainly not when strangers with notepads asked her questions. She didn't speak a word. The only thing she responded to was, "Ranger." Everyone assumed Lily was too young to be a reliable witness, too traumatized to remember, too small to help. But no one realized how closely she had been watching. What she had heard, what she had seen, and no one, not even the officers, understood. Yet that the most powerful testimony in this entire case would come from a 3-year-old girl and her unshakable bond with a police dog. That night, justice began with a bark and a whisper. The days that followed the break-in were a blur for the Carter family. Their once cozy home now felt like a crime scene. Police tape fluttered in the summer breeze. Drawers remained open from the search, and glass still crunched beneath their feet. But none of that compared to what was happening with Lily. She didn't talk. She didn't cry. She just watched. Sometimes she'd stare at the front door for hours. Sometimes she'd curl into the corner of the couch, clutching her stuffed dog, rocking slowly, eyes vacant. No amount of soothing from Sarah or Thomas helped. She didn't respond to bedtime stories, to her favorite cartoons, or even to her grandpa's silly voices that always made her giggle. Only one thing calmed her. Ranger. The police K-9 had been by her side the night of the attack, and from that moment, she was inexplicably attached to him. The morning after the incident, when officers returned to speak with the Carters, Ranger happened to be with his handler, Officer Martinez. The moment Ranger stepped through the front door, Lily stood up for the first time in 12 hours and walked straight to him. She didn't say a word. She just sat down beside him and placed her tiny hand on his back. Martinez noticed. She hasn't been speaking? Thomas shook his head. Not once. Not to us, not to the doctors. She won't even eat unless we're holding her. Martinez exchanged a look with the therapist assigned to the case. Let's bring Ranger with us again tomorrow. And so they did. Ranger became a daily visitor. Each day, Lily would sit beside him, sometimes brushing his fur with her fingers, other times simply leaning her head against his side. Her silence, once thick with tension, began to shift into something more peaceful. She didn't speak, but she was listening, watching, processing. The therapist, Dr. Jenny Alvarez, began incorporating Ranger into their sessions. She'd sit quietly across the room, observing Lily's movements. The little girl never acknowledged Dr. Alvarez directly, but she was more relaxed when Ranger was present. She'd even mimic his breathing, rising and falling with his chest as if trying to sync her own shattered rhythm to his. Ranger is her anchor, Alvarez told the Carters. Right now, he's the only living being she trusts. We have to work through him. One day during their 5th session, something shifted. Lily sat on the floor. Ranger curled beside her, half dozing. Dr. Alvarez placed a set of laminated cards on the floor. Each card had a simple picture. A house, a door, a dog, a flashlight, pair of shoes. Lily's eyes moved from card to card, uninterested until the final card. It was a photo of Ranger wearing his police vest, taken during a department training day. Several other dogs were in the background, standing beside their handlers. Lily stared. Her hand reached forward. She tapped the image. That's Ranger, she said softly. Barely above a breath, Dr. Alvarez froze. Yes, that's him. Lily leaned in closer. But that one, she pointed to another dog in the background, almost obscured by shadow. That's the mean one, he heard Ranger. Silence fell. Dr. Alvarez gently scooted forward. Sweetheart, what do you mean? Lily didn't answer. Her tiny hands reached out and hugged Ranger tightly. He barked when the bad man yelled. The words were like thunder, precise, unprompted, frighteningly clear. When Dr. Alvarez shared the session notes with investigators, they were stunned. Ranger hadn't been injured. Or had he? And who was the other dog? Why did Lily say he barked when the bad man yelled? The photo Lily pointed to was part of an archived training day held 3 months earlier. Multiple departments had participated, including One officer who had quietly transferred districts after a string of internal complaints. No one thought Lily could remember. No one believed she'd be able to say anything helpful, but they had underestimated the sharp eyes of a child and the loyalty of a dog. Ranger had found Lily in her darkest moment. Now, she was finding something in him. Not just comfort. Clarity. And she was just beginning to speak. It was the first time anyone had seen Lily interested in something outside of Ranger. Dr. Jenny Alvarez had been working gently, patiently, never pushing, never pressuring. Every word Lily offered was like gold, rare, fragile, and incredibly valuable. That one session, where Lily pointed out a dog in the background of a training photo, had caused more than just a ripple. It had triggered an entire undercurrent of suspicion that began pulling the investigation in a direction no one had expected. But Dr. Alvarez wasn't done. The next day, she laid out the photo binder again. This time, she let Lily turn the pages herself. The pictures were of various police K-9 units across the state, images collected from training exercises, community events, and award ceremonies. Ranger appeared in a few. Lily always paused when she saw him, touching the page gently. She even whispered his name a few times. Then she turned to a photo and stopped. It was a blurry group shot, taken at a multi-department training event 3 months earlier. In the foreground, Officer Martinez knelt beside Ranger. But off to the side, half obscured by shadow, was another officer with a tall, muscular German shepherd. Unlike Ranger's calm posture, this dog looked tense, ears pinned, mouth open mid-bark. The handler wore dark sunglasses and had a hand on the dog's collar. Lily's face changed. Her smile disappeared. She leaned forward and pointed again. "That one," she said. He barked when the bad man yelled. Dr. Alvarez kept her voice calm. "Do you remember where you heard him bark?" Lily nodded. "At night, when the window broke." There was no prompting, no suggestion, just a child telling what she remembered. Her words were soft, but terrifyingly specific. Dr. Alvarez took a slow breath. "Sweetheart, do you remember the man who was with the dog?" Lily hesitated. Then, almost too quietly to hear, she whispered, "He had black gloves." Alvarez didn't react visibly. She simply reached for the binder and closed it. That night, she made a call to Detective Amanda Voss. Detective Voss sat in her office long after the sun had gone down. The case had already gone cold in the eyes of some, but Voss wasn't the type to let things go. When Dr. Alvarez explained what Lily had said, Voss immediately requested a digital copy of the photo. She recognized the training session. It was part of a multi-jurisdictional K-9 seminar hosted months prior. Several departments attended, including some with officers who'd quietly retired or transferred under suspicious circumstances. One of them stood out, Officer Daniel Reeves, formerly of the Franklin County Sheriff's Office. Reeves had been on administrative leave just before transferring to another district. The reason was sealed, labeled as internal personnel matters, but Voss knew that usually meant something ugly had been swept under the rug. His canine Max had reportedly developed aggression issues and had been retired early. But no. One could say where Max was now. Voss opened the binder photo and zoomed in. There he was, Reeves. Same build, same sunglasses, same posture. And the dog? That had to be Max. She cross-checked timestamps. That same night, months after the training there, had been a robbery 2 towns over. The house was accessed without any sign of forced entry, but an alarm system had been disabled using a code. Only law enforcement would have had that information. Reeves had worked nearby at the time. Her pulse quickened. Could Lily have uncovered a hidden pattern? She pulled up a map of recent unsolved burglaries across 3 counties. Every one of them had a common theme: disabled alarms, no fingerprints, and no arrests. All had occurred in towns where Reeves had recently been present. And now, thanks to a traumatized little girl and a blurry photo, the entire puzzle had a centerpiece. Back in her bedroom, Lily lay on the floor next to Ranger, one hand resting on his back. She wasn't afraid anymore, at least not as much. Every time Ranger exhaled, so did she. She still didn't speak much. But when she did, she often said one thing: Ranger didn't let go. Neither would the truth. And the picture she remembered so clearly? It wasn't just a photo. It was evidence. Real, powerful, unforgettable. And soon, it would blow the entire case wide open. Detective Amanda Voss sat rigid in her chair, her eyes locked on the screen as she clicked through surveillance footage from a burglary in Trotwood, just 10 miles from the Carter residence. The footage was grainy, but clear enough to show a shadowy figure, masked and dressed in black, walking a dog on a leash, not a pet. A trained working dog. The figure didn't break in. They simply walked up to the back entrance, typed something into the security panel, waited for the green light, and entered like they owned the place. No alarms. No panic. It was surgical. Precise. Professional. Her mind spun as she reviewed the photo from Dr. Alvarez's session. There he was again, Officer Daniel Reeves, flanked by the same large German Shepherd Lily had pointed out. The same build. The same gait. Everything lined up. What had begun as a terrifying home invasion now looked like part of a calculated string of crimes. Lily, Carter's whispers once dismissed as the disjointed ramblings of a traumatized child, were proving. Sharper than any polygraph, Detective Voss compiled her findings into a report. Over the course of 6 months, there had been 9 unsolved burglaries across 3 counties, all executed in eerily similar fashion. Every break-in had occurred near where Reeves had either worked or visited during his off-duty hours. Even more chilling, in at least 5 of those cases, residents reported hearing barking during or after the event. But no police dog had been officially dispatched. Voss dialed her captain. "I think we've got a dirty cop. Possibly more than one," she said. "And we've got a 3-year-old eyewitness who just blew this case open." There was a long silence. Then came the reply, "Build your case," discreetly. Meanwhile, the Carters were trying to return to normal, though normal now meant locked doors, alarms, and sleeping with a light on. Lily was speaking a little more, but only when Ranger was around. It was as if she stored her words for him. She drew him pictures. Sometimes they were of her house, sometimes of the mean dog. One particular drawing showed 2 stick figures in masks standing beside a dog with angry eyes. One of the figures was yelling. The dog was barking. But in the corner was another dog, calm, standing beside a small girl. Ranger. Sarah Carter looked at the picture, her hands trembling. She didn't know if it would ever be used in court, but she knew one thing. Lily remembered. And she had seen more than anyone realized. The K-9 division. Officer Martinez noticed something too. A few weeks prior, Ranger had reacted strongly to a visiting K-9 team from a nearby county. While normally steady and focused, Ranger had growled softly as a German Shepherd named Max walked past. It had been chalked up to territory or tension. Now, Martinez wasn't so sure. Something's off about that dog, he muttered to himself as he replayed the incident in his mind. Ranger never reacted like that, without cause. And then he remembered Max had been Reeves' partner. The same dog Lily had identified. The mean one. That wasn't a coincidence. Not anymore. Detective Voss obtained Max's retirement records. On paper, it looked routine. Max had become unstable in high-stress scenarios, deemed unfit for service. But buried in the margins was a line noting disciplinary issues related to his handler. Even stranger, Max hadn't been sent to a public adoption agency like most retired. K-9 South. He'd gone missing from the system entirely. Gone. Just like Reeves. With mounting evidence, Voss filed for a warrant and began building her timeline. She had the photo, the match in dog behavior, a suspicious string of perfect robberies. And now, a child's testimony connecting them all. It wasn't just a hunch. It was a pattern, a trail, and it all began with Lily whispering, "He hurt Ranger." Late that night, Voss stood outside the Carter home. She wasn't there to interrogate anyone. She simply knocked and asked to see Lily's latest drawings. When Lily came into the room, she didn't say much, just quietly walked over to Ranger, wrapped her arms around him, and said softly, "He's not scared of the mean dog anymore." Voss nodded. "Neither are we." And with that, the investigation shifted from reactive to relentless. They weren't just solving a break-in now. They were unraveling a conspiracy. And it started with a little girl who refused to forget, and a dog who refused to leave her side. The courtroom was packed, an unusual sight for a case that had started as a simple burglary. But this wasn't just about a break-in anymore. It had become something far bigger. Corruption, betrayal, and the powerful testimony of a child whose voice had once been feared lost. At the center of it all sat Daniel Reeves. The former officer looked confident, calm. He wore a crisp suit instead of a uniform, but he still carried himself like he belonged in the room, as if the badge he'd disgraced still clung to him like armor. His defense team projected smug assurance, certain the prosecution wouldn't dare call a traumatized toddler to the stand, but they were wrong. That morning, the judge ruled in favor of the motion to allow Lily Carter to testify with accommodations. Testimony would be brief, no cross-examination, no leading questions. And most importantly, Ranger would be allowed to sit beside her. The gasps from the gallery were audible when the doors opened. Lily entered slowly, wearing a pale yellow dress, and gripping her mother's hand tightly. Her other hand held a small stuffed animal Woof, the toy dog she'd clung to during the break-in. At her side walked Ranger, his vest removed for the day, tail gently swaying. The judge gave a gentle nod. "Miss Carter may sit wherever she's most comfortable." Lily chose the floor beside the witness box, nestled against Ranger. A microphone was adjusted to reach her level. Her eyes never met the rows of strangers. She kept her focus on Ranger, one hand on his back, the other clutching Woof. "Lily," the prosecutor said softly, kneeling. "Do you remember when the police came to your house?" She nodded. "Was Ranger there?" Another nod. Then softly, "He found me." "Can you tell me what happened when the bad men came?" Lily's eyes stayed on Ranger. She blinked. "I was hiding," she whispered. "They yelled a lot. They hurt the girl. And then the mean dog barked." The defense attorney stood halfway up. "Objection sustained," the judge cut in. "She's describing what she witnessed." The courtroom fell silent. Again, the prosecutor carefully placed a laminated photo on a small stand, a cropped version of the training day image. "Lily, do you know this picture?" She studied it, then pointed. "That's Ranger. And who else do you see?" She tapped another dog in the background, the mean one. "He barked when the man yelled." "And was this the same barking you heard during the break-in?" Lily paused, then nodded. "He was angry, not like Ranger." The prosecutor took a breath. "Do you see the man who was with the mean dog that day?" Lily looked up for the first, timed out her small finger, pointed slowly, firmly toward Daniel Reeves. The room held its breath. "That's him," she whispered. "He hurt Ranger." Reeves shifted in his seat, his jaw tightening. The judge leaned slightly forward. "Let the record show the witness identified the defendant." Lily went quiet again, laying her head on Ranger's side, as the bailiff carefully removed the photograph. The prosecutor gently thanked her and stood. There were no dramatic speeches. No crossfire. Just a 3-year-old sitting with her dog, stating what she remembered. And it was enough. Because what Lily said, he hurt Ranger, wasn't just about physical harm. It was about betrayal. About what she'd seen when a man who wore a badge became the very thing the badge was meant to protect her from. It was pure, undiluted truth, and no jury could look away from that. When Lily was led back out of the courtroom, she was greeted by a standing ovation from officers, family members, and strangers alike. Her testimony had lasted only minutes, but its impact would last a lifetime. The courtroom had expected doubt, hesitation, confusion. Instead, they got clarity, because sometimes it takes a child to say what adults are too blind or too afraid to see. And in that moment, justice took its first real breath. By the following morning, Lily Carter's name and her quiet courtroom testimony had spread far beyond the walls of the Dayton courthouse. 3-year-old stuns courtroom, exposes corrupt cop with one whisper. Toddler testimony breaks police burglary ring dog by her side. Lily and Ranger, the smallest witness and the bravest K9. Cable news anchors recited the story like a fable unfolding in real life. Social media erupted. Hashtags like #Lily and Ranger, #Truth by Innocence, and #K9 Justice trended worldwide. Celebrities, activists, and politicians weighed in. Some marveled at Lily's memory. Others demanded further investigation into police corruption across state lines. But what united everyone left, right and center, was the power of what had happened. A frightened child had held the nation's attention with only a few words. And a dog. Sarah Carter didn't even turn on the television that day. She didn't need to. The knock at their door said everything. It was a reporter, the fourth one that morning. Sarah gently declined the interview, but not before the woman handed her a letter. "This is from a child trauma nonprofit in Seattle," she said softly. "They want to thank Lily. What she did is already helping other kids speak up." Sarah closed the door and pressed the envelope to her chest. She'd never imagined her daughter would become a symbol of courage. She just wanted her to sleep through the night. At the police department, Officer Martinez stood before a swarm of cameras, Ranger by his side. The chief announced a full internal audit of every department Reeves had worked with. The K9 division was also launching new procedures for retiring service dogs to ensure no future abuse or repurposing for criminal activity. When a reporter asked about Lily, Martinez cleared his throat. "She did what grown men wouldn't," he said. "She remembered what mattered, and she trusted the only soul who never let her down." That dog sitting beside her gave her voice back. A pause, a softer tone. "She's not just brave. She's a hero." That evening, Lily sat curled in her blanket fort at home, surrounded by drawings. One showed Ranger wearing a cape. Another showed her and him holding paws, her word for hands. She wasn't fully aware of what she'd done, but she could sense the change. Her parents didn't cry as much anymore. There were more hugs, more smiles. And Ranger? He never left her side. When she slept, he slept. When she dreamed, sometimes waking with a startled breath, he was already there. A warm presence to pull her back to calm. Dr. Alvarez visited the next day and found Lily waiting with a crayon, drawing in hand. "I drew the bad dog again," Lily said. Dr. Alvarez accepted it gently. "You remembered more?" Lily nodded. "But I don't think he wanted to be mean. I think the man made him." The therapist blinked. "Why do you think that?" Lily shrugged. "Because he was scared." 2. It hit Dr. Alvarez like a wave. This child didn't just recall facts. She had felt something no camera or fingerprint could capture. Fear shared between victims. even the four-legged ones. That insight would be used in courtroom arguments later when it came time to decide what would happen to Max, the mean dog. He wouldn't be euthanized. Thanks to Lily's unexpected compassion, he would be sent to a rehabilitation center for former service dogs. Justice wasn't just being served, it was being shaped into something human, something healing. Elsewhere, letters flooded the Carter family's mailbox. Some came from other children, thanking Lily for being brave. Others came from parents, saying her story gave them hope that their own silent kids might speak one day. One letter came from a retired police officer in Arizona. I saw too many good dogs turned into weapons by bad men. Lily saw what most adults miss. She didn't just tell the truth. She reminded us of what we forgot. The badge is supposed to protect the innocent, not terrify them. For the first time in weeks, Sarah sat with Thomas and Lily on the porch. The sky was quiet. The world still. "Do you know what you did, baby?" Sarah asked. Lily looked up, Ranger's head in her lap. "I remembered," Sarah nodded. "You did. And you helped everybody else remember too." And as Ranger gently licked her hand, Lily whispered something she hadn't said since before the night everything changed. "I'm not scared anymore." The verdict came quickly. After Lily's testimony and the mountain of evidence that followed, surveillance footage, personnel files, digital traces, and damning connections, there was little left to dispute. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. When they returned, the courtroom fell into a breathless hush. On the charge of burglary in the first degree, guilty. On the charge of criminal conspiracy, guilty. On the charge of child endangerment, guilty. Daniel Reeves showed no emotion as the words hit like hammers. He simply stared forward, the weight of his badge-turned betrayal finally crashing down on him. He was sentenced to 28 years in federal prison, but justice didn't end with a prison cell. It echoed through the city like a wind finally cleared of smoke. What started as a single terrifying night in the life of a 3-year-old had become a legal reckoning. 2 more officers in neighboring districts were quietly placed under investigation. Several retired canines south were tracked down and safely rehomed. A nationwide review of canine handling and retirement policies was initiated, something long overdue. And in the center of it all stood Lily. She didn't understand what the verdict meant in full, but she could feel it like a heavy cloud had lifted. For the first time since the break-in, she slept through the night without waking. She no longer kept Woof clutched tightly to her chest. Ranger, always nearby, would now lie at the foot of her bed, rather than curled beside her like a shield. It wasn't just safety she had reclaimed. It was peace. A week later, Lily stood on the steps of the police department, in front of a modest but heartfelt ceremony. She wore a little blue dress, her hair in 2 tiny braids. In one hand, she held her mother's. In the other, Ranger's leash. The chief of police presented the award, the Medal of Bravery, not just to Officer Martinez and Ranger, but to Lily Carter herself. She showed more courage than many of us ever have, the chief said, voice tight with emotion. And she reminded us why we wear this badge in the first place. Lily didn't speak to the crowd. She didn't need to. She just smiled, wide and real, and gave Ranger a kiss on the nose when they handed him a silver collar etched with the words, "Loyal, brave, protector." The applause lasted nearly a minute. Officers wiped their eyes. Reporters captured the moment. And Ranger, ever composed, stood tall until Lily wrapped her arms around him and whispered something in his ear that only he could hear. He wagged his tail gently. At home that night, the Carters ate dinner together for the first time in weeks, without someone crying halfway through. There were still occasional bad dreams, still shadows that lingered around certain corners. But the difference now was clear. Lily knew she had beaten the dark. She had faced it and named it and brought it to light. And she hadn't done it alone. Do you think Ranger knows he's a hero? She asked her dad as they folded blankets. On the couch, Thomas smiled. I think he always knew. He was just waiting for the rest of us to figure it out. Lily giggled. He should be on TV. He already is, sweetheart, Sarah said from the kitchen, holding up her phone where a video of the ceremony had gone viral overnight. Millions of views. Thousands of comments. Schools, police departments, and even therapy centers were reaching out, asking if Lily's story could be shared. But the Carters said no for now. Lily's story belonged to her. And for the first time in a long time, they just wanted to be a family again. That night, as the stars blinked awake outside her window, Lily lay in bed with Ranger curled at her feet. Ranger? She whispered, sleep tugging at her voice. We did it, huh? Ranger lifted his head slightly, as if answering her with silence. She smiled, rolled onto her side, and let her eyes drift closed. For the first time, she dreamed of light instead of shadows. And in that light, she saw a dog standing tall beside a little girl, both of them brave, both of them forever changed. Months had passed since the courtroom drama, the headlines and the quiet victories that came with justice served. Life, as it often does, had settled into a new rhythm for the Carter family, one that was quieter, safer, and filled with more laughter than they had heard in a long time. Lily had grown in ways no one expected. The trauma that once silenced her had transformed into a source of strength. She was no longer just a victim or a witness. She was a beacon for others who struggled to find their voice. At preschool, Lily was blossoming. She talked more freely. Now, often with Ranger lying loyally beside her during nap time, as he had been trained to provide comfort. Teachers noticed her empathy for other children, especially those who were shy or frightened. Some even called her a little hero, though Lily would simply giggle and stroke Ranger's soft fur. The Carters moved to a quiet neighborhood near a large park, a place where they could breathe without fear and watch Lily play under the open sky. Sarah had taken a leave from work to focus on her daughter's healing and to advocate for better protections for children and animals in law enforcement. Thomas, inspired by the ordeal, decided to start a nonprofit aimed at supporting families impacted by police misconduct. It was a small but growing organization, one built on the foundation of truth, trust, and the belief that no child should ever be scared in their own home. Ranger, now officially retired from the police force, had become the family's constant companion and unofficial ambassador. He visited schools, hospitals, and therapy centers, helping children learn that sometimes bravery comes on 4 paws and a wagging tail. One sunny afternoon, the Carters were invited to speak at a community event about their experience. The room was filled with parents, police officers, therapists, and children, all eager to hear their story. Lily stood nervously beside her parents, holding Ranger's leash tightly. Sarah smiled reassuringly. Lily wants to share something with you all, she said. Lily took a deep breath. I was scared, but Ranger helped me be brave. And you can be brave too. Even when things seem dark, there's always a light. The crowd applauded softly, moved by the simplicity and power of her words. Afterwards, a young girl approached Lily shyly, holding her hand. Thank you, she whispered. You helped me find my voice. Lily smiled and nodded, knowing that her story was no longer just hers. It belonged to all those who needed hope. Back at home, the quiet moments were just as important. One evening, as the sun set in a blaze of orange and pink, Lily sat with Ranger on the porch swing. She leaned her head against his warm fur and whispered, Thank you for never leaving me. Ranger rested his head on her lap, eyes closing in contentment. In those moments, healing was complete. The night no longer held terror, it held peace. The story of Lily Carter and Ranger had started as a nightmare, but ended as a testament to resilience. The truth that even the smallest voices can spark the greatest change. Their journey reminded the world that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the choice to face it together. And for Lily, Ranger, and the Carter family, a new chapter had begun, one filled with hope, love, and the promise that justice, kindness, and loyalty would always win.